Hello and welcome back, and today I'm going to do these Make Market pixelated art bricks, and they're both summer themed with a boat and a lighthouse, and I really do love the lighthouse a lot, but the boat is also cute too. So when I opened up the box, I got all of the little bricks and then the actual board to put the two art pieces on, and then of course the instructions. And this little tool here on the picture that helps whenever I need to take off some of the pieces. So I just decided to start with the boat first, which actually ended up being, in my opinion, a lot more difficult because of the bottom part of the water, which you'll see later. So I just started with picking up all of the blocks that I would need, and it ended up being every single color, but it was still good to make sure that I had all of them. And then I just started with the top little blue. It's a darkest blue, and you can see I'm kind of not going in a straight line because of where the clouds are going to be. And then once I was about finished with that, it got a lot quicker once I actually figured it out how to do it. And the last little pieces. And then here's how the blue looks. And then I put on these little lifter pieces to make it so that it is a 2D art project. So I put the white on top of the second part, and I was going to have more layers, but then I realized that you'd be able to see the black blocks from on the side, and I didn't really want to see that whenever I looked to the side of my project. So I decided to only keep it 2D. After I finished up the dark blue and then part of the cloud, I did the black pieces for the sail of the boat. And I like how in the sail it has a little bit of an opening, so you can kind of see the two colors, the dark blue and the lightest blue mix. So I just thought that was kind of cool. And then after I finished that, I went over here and did the smaller clouds. And I really liked using the little dotting tool that I had for in the small little areas. And the dotting tool I was using is meant for diamond art, but I just thought it worked pretty well for this too. I finished up the sail and then did the lightest blue for the sky. And this part was super easy because all I had to do was just go around where the sail of the boat already was, and I didn't have to worry about anything else like the clouds to not fill in. Putting in extra pieces for the sail, just the little white pieces. After I finished up the lightest blue and part of the boat, I did the ocean, which was the most difficult part because it had all of these different greens mixed in, and I tried to keep it as best part of the pattern as I could, but it did get a little bit messed up, so some of it's not exactly like the picture, but I still think it looked pretty good in the end. And it still looked like an ocean. But this, I was also trying to make them really in a straight line because I thought that they looked a lot nicer like that, so I just really tried to keep them in a straight line, which made it a little bit more difficult. And then I used the darkest kind of green down here at the bottom, and I like how that looks, and I really like how all of them kind of blend together even though they're not actually blending together, because I think that they look nice in the end. And then I just had to finish up this last little bit. And you can't see, but there is a black part of the boat, but you'll be able to see it once I fill in this part right here. And here's how it looks in the end. I really do enjoy this, and it took me about 3 hours to complete, which is kind of crazy because of how small it is, but it would have taken me longer if I did all of the layers. And then I started on the lighthouse, and this one I was the most excited for because I thought that the lighthouse looked so much cuter, and it was actually more easy to do because it didn't have that bottom ocean part, and it was all just straight lines and just a few little pieces that were like mixed in. What I would do whenever I was doing this whole project is I would just fill up like how I had before, like 3 rows, and then I'll just fill that in because it took me a lot less time, or at least it felt like a lot less time. So I like that, doing that. And then I also had to make sure that I was counting my rows correctly, like you see here. I'm counting how many spaces is in between each spot. And that was the most difficult part because if I messed it up just a little bit, it would push everything off to the side, which is kind of what happened in the sea at the bottom for the last one. So I didn't want to make that mistake again. And then here's the little lighthouse. And I love how cute it looks because it's just a small little lighthouse compared to the boat. And I don't know, I just like it a lot better. Filling in the rest of the blue. And then you can already see like the outline of the lighthouse. And it already has, if you look on the bottom too, you can see the other black pieces kind of that are lifted a little bit more, but it's a little bit difficult to see. But they are there, and I just skipped it because it wasn't even able to see. Filling in the last little bits, and here I am doing where I did it last time, where I just fill in a bunch of little pieces all the way up like this, because I think it goes by so much quicker if I just have at least like 2 or 3 rows to work on. And then my favorite part was just filling in the top of the lighthouse because I just think it looks so cute and small against the rest of the background. And then after I finished that, I did the ocean part. And this was a little bit difficult because the end of the skyline had these boats right here, and I ended up messing it up at first, so I had to fix it. And I think these are boats right here. I would call them boats. So maybe it's like these are the boats, and then if you zoom in, you get that one boat that I just did before. That's what I like to think. Then when I did the ocean, here it is, so much easier. I just had to fill in 2 lines for the top part of the ocean and then 3 lines for the darker green for the bottom part of the ocean. And I really liked how it was so much easier. And then time to just finish up the rest of the sky. And here it's a little bit difficult because I had to get the block to fit in between 2 pieces. And then after I finished up the skyline, I then started on the other part of the skyline. Just finishing up that, and then after I did that, then I finished up the lighthouse. And this is when it was really difficult for me at like the beginning whenever I was planning out what I was gonna make bigger or more elevated compared to the rest, because I wanted the lighthouse to be elevated and popped out, but then I also wanted the boats to be popped out, but I just didn't think that they would look so nice. So I did these little rocky parts underneath the lighthouse, and part of the ocean right below it to be the elevated parts because I thought that would look a lot nicer, and I liked how it looked in the end better. I put on the elevated bricks for the rest of the rocks and the ocean that connects to the lighthouse, and then I just started filling them in. And somewhere whenever I was doing this, I ended up not putting enough elevated bricks, so I kind of just had to make up the end pieces also with the ocean wave white part right there at the very bottom where the ocean meets the rocks. But then I used this dark green that I used for the other ocean in the first one at the very bottom. And then finally did the last few pieces. But this is how it looks in the end, and I really enjoyed this one a lot more because I actually planned out the elevation for the bottom part. And in total, both of these projects took me about 6 hours because I started at like 1-ish and then ended at like 9 o'clock at night. Anyway, I made this little outro music, and I'll see you next week. Bye!